The night I caught my girlfriend in my best friend's arms, I thought my world was over, but I never expected heartbreak to lead me into the kind of love that would change everything. I never thought betrayal could be so silent. It didn't come with yelling, or slammed doors, or broken glass. It came with laughter, soft, hushed, familiar laughter that I knew too well. That night, I stopped by my best friend's place unannounced. I was carrying a bag of takeout, thinking we'd all sit together, the three of us, like always. But as soon as I reached the door, I heard it, her voice. My girlfriend. And then his. Both tangled together in a rhythm that was far too intimate to be innocent. I froze, my hand gripping the handle until my knuckles turned white. Part of me wanted to knock, to storm in, to demand answers. But instead, I pushed the door open quietly. What I saw didn't need explanation. They were close, too close. Her hand rested on his chest the way it used to rest on mine. His head tilted toward hers with that same grin I'd seen 1,000 times when we were kids, when we'd sworn loyalty to each other. Their laughter died the moment they noticed me standing there, takeout still dangling in my hand. No one spoke. No one had to. The truth hung between us like thick smoke, choking me. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. Something inside me felt too heavy, too numb. Instead, I just set the bag of food down on the counter, the smell of fried rice and chicken suddenly sickening, and I walked out. The night air hit me like a slap. My chest burned, but my legs kept moving. I didn't even know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay there, not in that room where everything I believed in had crumbled in seconds. My phone buzzed again and again in my pocket, her name flashing across the screen, then his. I couldn't bring myself to answer. I didn't want to hear excuses, or apologies, or lies polished into half-truths. All I wanted was silence. By the time I reached my apartment, the city felt too loud. Every sound, car horns, voices, music spilling from open windows, made me feel smaller, lonelier. Inside, the quiet was worse. The pictures on the wall, the ones of us smiling together, mocked me. Her smile used to be my anchor. Now it was just a reminder that I hadn't seen it coming. I tried to sleep that night, but my body wouldn't let me. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding with questions I didn't want answers to. How long? Why him? Why not just tell me? The betrayal didn't just break me, it hollowed me out. My best friend. My girlfriend. The two people I trusted most. Gone in the same breath. And though I didn't know it then, that night would mark not just the end of something, but the beginning of something else entirely. Something I never could have predicted. The days after that night blurred together. I'd wake up, but it never felt like morning. It felt like an endless continuation of the same sleepless night. The kind of fog where time doesn't move forward, it just circles around you, pressing down, heavy and unrelenting. I stopped answering messages. My phone became an enemy, buzzing with apologies, explanations, and pleas. Sometimes I'd throw it across the couch, other times I'd just stare at the screen, my thumb hovering over her name, wondering if I had the strength to hear her voice again. I never did. My apartment, once filled with her laughter, her perfume, the hum of shared life, now felt hollow. I couldn't sit in the living room without hearing echoes of our conversations. I couldn't look at the kitchen without remembering her humming while she made coffee. Every corner was a battlefield of memories, and I was losing. One evening, I found myself sitting on the front steps, the chill of the concrete seeping through my jeans. I had no plan, no thought, just emptiness. The world went on without me, cars driving by, neighbors walking dogs, distant music from an open window. And there I was still, like a shadow among the living. That's when I heard her voice. Not her voice, not the one that betrayed me, but another. Warm, calm, steady. My neighbor. She must have noticed me out there, slouched and staring at nothing. She was in her early 40s, a woman I'd only exchanged polite hellos with before. But that night, she didn't just nod and pass by. She stopped. She studied me for a moment, her eyes carrying a mix of curiosity and quiet understanding. "You look like you could use something warm," she said softly. And before I could respond, she disappeared inside her house. A few minutes later, she returned with a mug of tea. Steam rose into the cool night air, carrying with it a faint, floral scent, jasmine, I think. She didn't ask me what happened. She didn't pry. She simply handed me the cup, her fingers brushing mine, the warmth transferring into my cold hands. "Drink," she said. "It helps." And it did. Not because the tea had some magical property, but because of what it symbolized. Someone had noticed me. Someone cared enough to pause their evening, to offer a small gesture of comfort when I didn't even know how to ask for it. We sat there quietly. She on her step, me on mine. The night wrapped around us, heavy but strangely less lonely. She spoke after a while, her voice low and unhurried. About little things, the weather, her garden, the neighbor's noisy dog. Nothing that demanded answers, nothing that pressed against the raw wound I carried. And somehow, in that silence, in that simple exchange of warmth and presence, I felt something shift. A thread of connection, delicate but real. I didn't know it then, but her presence would become the lifeline I didn't even realize I needed. The nights became a little less heavy after that first cup of tea. I didn't realize it at the time, but that small gesture opened a door, not just to her house, but to her presence in my life. It started simply. I'd find myself on the steps again, restless and unwilling to face the silence inside. And almost as if she knew, she'd appear. Sometimes with tea, sometimes with nothing but a gentle smile. She never pushed. She just sat beside me, letting the quiet be what it was. But slowly, the quiet began to change. Words crept in. First about ordinary things, her flowers, the way the weather had been too harsh that season, the books she was reading. I'd nod, offering little responses. But eventually, I started sharing too. One night, I told her how I hadn't been sleeping. How I'd close my eyes and see their faces, my best friend and my girlfriend, laughing in that way that used to comfort me but now only cut deeper. My voice cracked, and I hated how raw it sounded, how weak. She didn't flinch. She didn't offer empty comfort. She just looked at me, her eyes soft but steady, and said, "Loss doesn't just happen when someone leaves. It happens when trust breaks. That's the hardest kind to heal." There was something in the way she said it, not as advice, not as a lecture, but as someone who knew. That's when she told me, in pieces, about her own story. A marriage that ended quietly, painfully. A partner who had once been her world but chose someone else. She spoke without bitterness, but I could hear the echo of old hurt beneath her calm tone. And I realized, she understood. Not in theory, not in pity. She knew exactly what it meant to have the ground pulled out from under you. I found myself watching her when she spoke. The way her hands rested in her lap, steady but worn. The way her voice carried both strength and a vulnerability she rarely showed. She was older, yes, a decade and a half beyond me, but there was something ageless about her presence. Something grounding. One evening, we sat together on her porch swing. The air was warm, the kind that hummed with crickets and carried the faint scent of blooming jasmine from her garden. The swing creaked softly beneath us. I shifted, and my arm brushed against hers. It was nothing, really, a small, accidental touch. But I felt it. A quiet spark, subtle yet undeniable. She glanced at me, just briefly, and I caught it, that look. Not just kindness, not just sympathy. Something else flickered there. Something unspoken. Neither of us mentioned it. We just sat, side by side, letting the night fold around us. But from that moment I knew, this connection wasn't just about shared pain. It was about something beginning. Something I hadn't expected. It happened on a night when the air felt heavy, like the sky was holding its breath. We had been sitting outside on her porch swing, talking about nothing in particular, neighbors, music, the stubbornness of her old car. The conversation was light, but underneath it, I felt that same undercurrent that had been building between us for weeks. Then, without warning, the first raindrops fell. She laughed softly as the wind picked up, rustling the trees. "Come on," she said, standing and motioning me inside. By the time I helped her close the last window, the rain had turned into a downpour, rattling against the glass, drumming on the roof like a heartbeat gone wild. I was soaked. My shirt clung to me, my hair dripping into my eyes. She turned and saw me like that, and for the first time, she really laughed. Not the polite kind of laugh neighbors share, but the kind that escapes freely, unguarded. Her hand rose almost without thought, brushing my wet hair back from my forehead. Her fingers lingered for a second longer than necessary. It was such a small touch, but it sent a shock through me, warmth against the chill of my skin, a ripple that settled deep in my chest. I looked at her, really looked. The dim light caught the delicate lines around her eyes, the grace etched into her face, the strength beneath her softness. And she was looking at me too. Not with pity. Not even just with affection. But with something heavier, something charged. Our eyes locked, and suddenly the sound of the rain faded. There was only her, only the space between us, so fragile, so full. For a heartbeat, I thought she might close the gap. Or maybe I thought I might. My pulse thundered in my ears. The room seemed to tilt toward her, pulling me with it. Then she stepped back. Just a small step, but it was enough to snap the moment in two. She cleared her throat, smoothing her hair as if nothing had happened. I'll get you a towel," she said quickly, her voice calm but her eyes avoiding mine. I nodded, though my chest still burned from the closeness. When she returned, she handed me the towel, her hand brushing mine again, softer this time, careful. We didn't speak of what had just passed between us. We sat on her sofa afterward, sipping tea as though the world hadn't just shifted under our feet. But it had. The air between us was different now, charged with something neither of us dared to name. Every glance lingered longer. Every touch, even accidental, hummed with meaning. And though either of us said a word, I knew. She felt it too. We both tried to ignore it after that night, that charged silence, that almost crossed line. We returned to our routines, to our porch talks and shared cups of tea. On the surface, nothing had changed. But beneath it, everything had. Every glance lingered. Every touch carried weight. And with each passing day, the unspoken between us grew heavier, pressing closer to the surface. It finally broke on a late evening walk. The air was cool, autumn creeping in. Streetlights cast soft, golden halos along the sidewalk, and the crunch of gravel echoed beneath our steps. We walked side by side, not touching, but close enough that I could feel her warmth beside me. I don't know what made me speak that night. Maybe it was the silence, maybe it was the weight I could no longer carry alone. My voice came low, uncertain. "I'm scared," I admitted. She glanced at me, brows drawn slightly, waiting. "I'm scared of trusting again," I continued. "Scared that if I let myself care about someone, it'll just end the same way. That I'll be left standing there again, wondering what I did wrong." My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "I don't know if I can handle being broken like that twice." The night seemed to still around us. For a moment, she said nothing, and I regretted opening myself up. But then she sighed, not the kind of sigh that carries impatience, but the kind that carries truth. "I'm scared too," she whispered. Her voice trembled in a way I had never heard before. "Do you know what people would say? About me? About you? They'd look at me and see a woman chasing something she shouldn't. They'd look at you and see someone too young to know what he really wants." Her hands were tucked into her coat pockets, but I saw the tension in her shoulders, the vulnerability she usually kept hidden. "I've built walls for years. I've convinced myself it's safer not to let anyone in. But then you..." She stopped herself, shaking her head, eyes fixed on the ground. I slowed my steps, watching her carefully. She wasn't just older. She wasn't just my neighbor. She was a woman who had carried her own heartbreak, who had fought her way back to stability, only to find herself here, teetering on the edge with me. Her hand brushed mine then, hesitant, almost accidental. But when I didn't pull away, she let it linger. Fingers trembling, she slipped them into mine, as though testing if it was allowed. The world seemed to exhale with us. The street light above cast us in a warm circle of glow, and for the first time in weeks, the knot in my chest loosened. We didn't kiss. We didn't rush. We just walked, hand in hand, our fears laid bare between us. And yet, somehow, holding her hand made the fears feel lighter. As if together, we could carry them. It was late when I found myself at her door again. I hadn't planned to go. I'd told myself I'd stay in, try to get some sleep, try to keep my heart steady. But restlessness gnawed at me, and before I knew it, my feet had carried me across the quiet street to her porch. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised. Almost as if she had been expecting me. Her expression was soft, her eyes carrying that familiar mix of warmth and hesitation. "Couldn't sleep again?" she asked gently. I nodded. She stepped aside, and I walked in. The house smelled faintly of vanilla and old books, a scent I had come to associate with comfort. We ended up on her sofa, a blanket draped across both of us to chase away the chill that had crept in with autumn. The rain had returned outside, tapping against the windows in a rhythm that filled the silence. We sat close, closer than usual. The kind of closeness where every small movement feels amplified, every shift of weight a whisper of possibility. At first, we talked about little things. A movie she had watched years ago, the way the neighborhood had changed over time. But slowly, the conversation thinned, until it was just quiet. A quiet that felt less like emptiness and more like invitation. Then she shifted, so small, so natural, and let her head rest lightly against my shoulder. My breath caught, though I tried to hide it. Her hair brushed my cheek, carrying the faintest trace of lavender. The weight of her against me wasn't heavy. It was grounding. Steady. Real. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rain, steady and constant, like the earth itself was giving us cover. I could feel the rhythm of her breathing, gentle against my chest, syncing with the steady pounding of my heart. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost fragile. "Being with you makes me feel alive again," she whispered. The words landed deep, cutting through every wall I had built. She wasn't saying them lightly. She wasn't careless. I knew how much it cost her to admit that. I swallowed hard, my throat thick, and before I could second-guess myself, I pressed my lips to the top of her head. Just a kiss. Gentle, tentative. But it was enough to send a wave of certainty crashing through me. She didn't move away. Instead, her hand found mine under the blanket, her fingers sliding between mine with quiet confidence. No declarations. No grand gestures. Just two people, broken in different ways, finding something steady in each other. That night, sitting close under a blanket, listening to the rain, I realized something. What had begun as healing had become something more. Something I didn't want to let go of. And from the way she leaned into me, I knew she felt the same. There was a time when I thought betrayal had stolen everything from me, my trust, my hope, even the simple belief that love could be real. But standing here now, I can see that what I lost was only part of the story. Because what grew out of that pain was something I never could have imagined. Weeks passed, and our closeness deepened in ways that felt both quiet and profound. We didn't rush. We didn't label what was happening. Instead, we let it unfold moment by moment, shared dinners, late-night talks, walks through the neighborhood where silence said as much as words ever could. There were still hesitations. I felt them in her sometimes, the way her eyes would drift when strangers passed, the way her hand would hover before it found mine in public. I understood. She worried about what people might think. About the years between us. About how fragile something new could be when the world is watching. But little by little, those fears softened. One crisp autumn afternoon, we walked together through the park. The air carried the smell of leaves, damp earth, and the faint sweetness of roasted chestnuts from a vendor nearby. Children laughed in the distance, chasing each other through piles of orange and red. Life moved on all around us, unbothered, unconcerned. Her hand slipped into mine, not hesitant this time, not testing. Certain. Sure. I felt her squeeze, firm and deliberate, and when I looked at her, she wasn't looking away. She was smiling, a small, knowing smile that reached her eyes. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't about replacing what I had lost. She wasn't filling a void. I wasn't clinging to her out of desperation. We were choosing each other. Freely. In spite of everything. I thought back to the boy I had been weeks before, broken, hollow, sitting on those cold steps with nothing but bitterness in my chest. If someone had told him that he would find love again so soon, and in a place he least expected, he wouldn't have believed it. He would have laughed bitterly and walked away. But life has a way of surprising us. We paused beneath a tree, the ground carpeted with leaves. She turned to me, brushing a strand of hair from her face, her eyes steady on mine. And though either of us said the word, love, out loud, it didn't matter. It was there, in the way her hand fit into mine, in the way her presence filled the spaces I thought would always remain empty. The world would talk, maybe. People would have opinions. But standing there, with her hand warm in mine, I knew their voices didn't matter. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I was home.